Good evening or late afternoon. We're getting ready to hit the sundown. So I'm walking a little faster to try to get as much of walking I can in the woods part before I have to walk on the pavement. So anyway, just wanted to say hello. I hope you all are having a wonderful day. And I definitely just really got inspired today about a few things. And I wanted to share some of my insights on blessings and on paying attention to where God is leading you. And, knowing that like when you are paying attention, that you are then going to get confirmation. And it's going to come about sometimes in unusual and unexpected ways. So, as I've been going through this journey, many of you who have been watching my channel, and again, if you haven't already, if you could please, subscribe, give me a thumbs up. It really would help to grow my channel. Thank you so much for doing that. If any of you have watched me on my journey, you probably know that I was in a relationship previously with someone who was a drug addict, narcissist, but this was all covert. I didn't know all this while this was going on. And as time went on and he showed his true colors, obviously I did what I could to protect myself. And there was a period of what I would call creating an escape plan, because at that point there were so many things that were intertwined. Finances, we were purchasing a house together, etc., etc. So there was so much that had to be undone. And again, lessons learned, verify would be my advice to any young woman who is considering to get married to some guy. Verify. That would be my best advice I could give to you, because what somebody says with their words may not necessarily be what the truth is. So in this whole journey of coming back to myself, reclaiming my power, creating that exit plan from that relationship, discovering all of the things that were hidden after he died, and continuing to dig my way out of the pit, out of the hole that I had dug myself into by association and by choosing to be engaged to someone who was a manipulative liar. So in this whole process, like I said, my finances were seriously attacked, and my physical assets of what I had amassed over a lifetime, and things that you take for granted because they live or are specifically stored in certain places. And if you know that these things are there, sometimes you're not, you're confident that like those things are there. You don't need them at the moment. Therefore, you're not going in every 5 seconds to check on them to be like, oh, is it still there? Because you have created a lifestyle for yourself that kind of having to check on your supplies all the time is not a normal behavior. It's a behavior that's created when people are stealing from you. So I did not have a weekly plan where I opened up every single place that I stored assets and thought that I needed to check and verify on them to see if they were still there. But unfortunately, by being associated with a drug addict who was covert, hiding this whole thing from me, and who was a narcissist, I didn't even understand at the time what the word narcissist meant. But lo and behold, I went through a season of having my assets disappear from before my eyes, and it was a slow process. I'm going to give you an example of sometimes how that might happen to you. So let's say you're wearing your favorite earrings and you get home from your long day of work and you just want to take your earrings out. So you set them on the coffee table next to the sofa. And you know that you stuck them there in the moment, but you're not thinking that you're purposefully losing your earrings at that moment. You know that you put them on the coffee table next to the sofa. But when you're with a narcissist, and a narcissist who is a drug addict, who is also a thief, is in your presence, they're scheming all the time about how they can steal your assets. And they're going to use those types of moments to their advantage. And then they're going to use whatever they have, whatever you have vulnerably expressed about yourself, they're going to use that against you. So, case in point, I have ADD or ADHD, whatever. So I forget things, and I get so consumed on some project that I might forget some of the things that are around me that I was like, oh wow, I made a pot of coffee and I forgot about it and now I'm going back to it, for example. But the point is, the earrings then disappeared. And then it's like, I have a specific event and I know I have this, I want to wear those earrings with this particular outfit. And therefore I'm searching, how you doing? I'm searching for those earrings for this particular outfit. And I'm going about the places where I would normally put the earrings. And it's not by the coffee table, by the sofa. It's not in my jewelry box. It's not in my purse and all the zippered bags that I might have put it in. So the point is, at this point, I then say to the fiance, hey, have you seen my gold earrings? And he'll say, no. What do they look like? And then I'll describe them. Oh no, babe, I haven't seen them, but if I find them, I'll let you know. So then what happens is he gives me back one gold earring. This is what I mean about their trickstery, okay? And he's like, oh, babe, I found your earring. And I'm like, oh, that's so great. And I'm like, well, where's the other one? And he's like, well, I only found one. Now, the bottom line is, he hawked that other earring. Maybe because I said something and it was within the short time frame of him taking it, that he's like, well, if I take one and she takes one, then I get, 50%. That's good enough. I don't understand the philosophy or the thinking process of someone who's trying to steal from you. But nonetheless, this is the story of how he used that to manipulate me. So then I'm like, oh, wow, well, one earring like that is not really valuable to me because I only have one set of ear holes, and I only want to wear one set of earrings at a time. And he's like, well, if you don't want it, since it's a single ear, earring, can I have it? And I was like, no, that's really an important earring to me. Like, I've had them since I got my ears pierced. In fact, I actually pierced my own ears myself. And he's like, you did not. And I'm like, yes, I did. And I'm like, and those are the earrings that I pierced my ears with. And he's like, I didn't think that you were that brave. So you see how now the story, as I share that the reason why I like these earrings are because I've had them since the day that I had my ears pierced, and I actually pierced my own ears with an ice cube. He's now trying to make me feel bad, look bad, by saying that he didn't think I was brave enough. This is how they destroy the relationship, the communication, by putting you down in cutting ways, and it's subtle. And in a way, and then when I'm like, well, that's not very nice. Oh, I didn't mean it like that. I just mean that, wow, that was really brave. You see how they're always covering themselves, hiding. Like, the first response was really how he felt, but they're constantly making excuses for what they say and do. So what I'm getting at is, there was a tremendous loss on my part due to the physical assets that I had in terms of heirlooms, antiques, jewelry, etc. And when you amass this kind of stuff over your lifetime, and you are in a process of moving into a new house, you know, we were selectively taking things out and putting them in storage lockers so that we would have less clutter in the apartment, so that when we moved to the house, all we had to do was unload the storage lockers and then move into the new place. But little did I know that he was going to the storage lockers and selling off my assets behind my back. So this is what I mean about the hidden, unknown behavior of a drug addict, of a narcissist, of someone who is a thief, and what they do and how they do it to manipulate you. So what I'm getting at is that's the past, okay? And here I am now, and I am reading about things I want to change about my finances in terms of rebuilding, right? And so there were several books that I purchased and several videos I watched, and I would journal about what I read, and then I would start to implement and take action steps towards repairing what was lost. So some of those action steps involved credit repair, and some of those involved, you know, building a savings all over again, because everything that I had saved in cash, he stole that from me. So like different techniques that were shared in different books, like for example, the $5 method. Whenever you get a $5 bill, you save that $5 bill in an envelope, you know, specifically just for this type of savings. And then, you know, it's just like, if you think about how you would spend $5 on a cup of coffee, you know, it's like, that's that $5 rule. So if you ever got a $5 bill, you just save all the $5, and then you have now a stash of $5 bills. And it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. As soon as you get it, you take it away and put it in the savings account. And then later on, you count them all up, and it's like, wow, from my persistence and discipline, I now have, you know, $500 in $5 bills, just because I purposely disciplined myself to do that particular task. So there were many books that I read, like I said, and implemented various strategies and methods. And one of these strategies, I believe it was called like Taming Your Finances, and it had a biblical approach. And within this book, there were concepts like, you know, if you're not tithing and you're not giving to God the first fruits, your 10% off the top, then you're taking away from God what is his, because he wants to bless you, but he needs your discipline to do that 10% tithing of the first fruits off the top. And like I said, when I was in this phase of doing well, I was tithing. But then after the catastrophe of all the financial hardship that I went through, and the financial loss from that relationship, and then the death from him, you know, my cash flow and my savings had greatly been hit. My assets had been hit. And so it was like starting all over again with nothing. And again, when I talk to my advisors and coaches, some of them advise me to, you know, not worry about saving the tithing to God at that point, because I was so devastated and I really needed to save money for my emergency savings. And then another person said, you know, given that you are really following biblical principles, it is better if you, you know, if you take that money and save it and put it directly for tithing. So again, it's that whole thing of like, depending on who, what the main focus of that coach or advisor is advising, then the recommendations of what they're going to, see for your circumstances and your situation may be different based on their title and what their specialization is. So for the biblical counselor, she was like, I think you should still tithe. For the regular psychotherapy counselor, she was like, no, just get yourself back on track and create an emergency fund after what you've been through. Meaning due to the trauma and the recovery of just emotionally, I was just so spent from what had happened. And my family was doing what they could, knowing all this financial hassles that I had been through. And at the time, my dad's like, here's 100, and it's like, it was an unexpected windfall. And, coming from my dad, that truly was a generous gift, meaning I knew that he was living on limited income. And when he gave me $100 bill, I was like, wow, like he really is sensing the strain that I'm going through during this period of, starting over. I just want to stop and get another sip of coffee. So what I'm getting at is that based on our circumstances, we may, choose to handle our current circumstances based on the multitude of advisors. And the Bible says, pay attention and have a multitude of advisors to be counseled from. And when I looked at the variety of people that were saying, save for your own emergency first because of what had happened to you. And that's exactly what I did. And I stopped tithing for a bit because of all of what, the majority of people were saying, save for yourself. So I did that for a while. And then after I overcame a tremendous amount of the grief, so this is probably I'm going to say a year and a half, the 2-year mark after he died, then I started to tithe again. And even though it wasn't a total 10%, it might have been 3% that I started with, and then 5%, and then 10%. Do you see what I'm saying? I started tithing with what I could do, because again, all of my expenses had doubled, because when you're sharing expenses with someone and then they're gone, they're not making their contribution anymore, and then you find out that the income sources and the savings resources that you had are now vanished, it was like I literally was in a place of feeling like I was in my 20s, even though I was in my 50s. So it's a major, blow to the ego for sure, because then you're on, what did I not see? And I start to psychoanalyze myself. How did I not see that he was doing this to me? How could I have been so blind, But the reality is, most people, when they save money in a hidden place, they're not giving people the combination or the location of where they save their money. And I had not. So this just goes to show that addicts, thieves, narcissists, they have an innate ability to be able to figure out who you are and think strategically about how you might think, and then to apply it to literally discover your money stashes. And that's exactly what happened. So here I am, fast forward, I'm rereading this book on taming your finances, and I have, been tithing once again, and I started to, again, look at what I had, and I was analyzing, but yet because of some of these other circumstances that I have found myself in, again, all of this is is the result of the choices that I made previously, okay? So long story short, I applied for a grant. I got accepted to receive this grant, and it was for going back to school. And it included money, tuition to go to school. It included living expenses. It included the whole shebang. And I followed all the protocol. I filled out all the things that I was supposed to fill out. I was compliant on my end. And I was told, yes, you're definitely going to school this particular semester. And I was told, yes, you should have this money in hand by this date. Well, this organization failed to keep their word. And again, after what I had been through with the narcissist, the drug addict, and I'm already trying to recover from people that have lied to me, and I'm having a difficult time trusting people, to then have this organization not come through, again, it tested my trust for people, okay? And I became, again, disappointed because this organization did not do what they said they were going to do. So at the last minute, I had to make a decision. Like, did I want to go to school? A federal student loan was being offered to me. And was I willing to take that risk? And in that moment, I was advised by one of my advisors that I should do it and prove to myself that, number one, I do have the necessary brain power to go back to school, and that it would be a test to my strength, because it had been many, many years since I had got my bachelor's. So this was like, whoa. So bottom line, I took a full schedule of master degree classes in 2024. And it was intense. It definitely challenged me on so many levels, but it did give me something to focus on instead of worrying about my finances, instead of worrying about all the drama and the emotional time that I had been investing in trying to recuperate and recover from being in a relationship with a narcissist and all of that, those feelings and emotions that I was going through as a result. And again, it's like you're questioning yourself, and it's a process of forgiving yourself for making that bad decision. So anyway, I go to school. I do handle it very well, despite all the challenges. And during that time, I had a flood in my apartment. I had a flood in my van. I had my father had a flood in his home. My dad was diagnosed with cancer with 6 months or less to live. And I was supposed to move to Virginia Beach. And I had to make a decision again, like, here, I'm going to go to school. I'm going to relocate, but my dad is dying. So I changed all my classes that were in person to online, and I stayed in this area, and I spent that valuable time with my dad. And I got to have that peace that when my dad died, like, I had all those conversations that I had wanted to have. So I'm grateful for that. But again, when people die, there is drama. And when you think about being a daughter, you think about your inheritance, and you think about what's appropriate, and knowing certain things that I had realistic expectations based on the conversations that I had had with my dad previously. I was under the impression that things were going to go a certain way. Well, they did not. And so again, when you're relying on other people, and these other people being people that are addicts, alcoholics, narcissists, they're going to disappoint you. And the sad thing is, we just have, maybe as empaths in general, we just have this hope that they will get it and they will figure it out one day, and they will want to do the right thing. And because I had seen that behavior previously, I thought, wow, my dad's really going to do the right thing. In some instances he did, in other instances he did not. So the point is, I had an expectation that again was disappointed. But when we bring this all back around to God, and God is our source, and I'm telling you, in those moments of losing everything due to the flood, okay, not even having one outfit to wear except the outfit that I had on that day, it's such a Job moment that when you have those kinds of Job moments, I don't know how to explain it, but it's just something shifts inside of you, and this level of relying on God, having gratitude for what you do have, and also appreciating that even in the storm, even in the middle of the flood, even in the middle of my dad dying to cancer, even in the middle of my fiance dying to drug addiction, even in the middle of losing so many of my assets that I was trying to build a life with and that I had from previously, and then all those things were wiped out. And if I look at one thing that's common, and I look to the leaves, and all these trees that are, letting go of their leaves, it's that in the letting go of the leaves, it's in the letting go of whatever our life was, that we really finally, at some point when we really surrender, we really give our life to God. And we're like, God, you're a good Father. I know you're going to take care of me just like you take care of the birds. I know you're going to take care of me and give me the resources that I need. I'm not going to starve. I know I'm going to have clothing. And this is what I mean about, like, sometimes it's strange, and yet in the process of receiving the blessings, and the blessings as they come in very different forms, it shows you that people are going to do what they can do with the resources that they have. And it goes to show you that, even the widow, the orphan, and the poor reached out to me during this time of total, disappointment and destruction that I went through. And I remember sitting in the hotel room, while I'm still working on my master's course. My father has died. There were many nights sitting in the hotel where I'm just, my paper is just filled with tears, and I don't have the motivation to continue reading these assigned readings. And, my friend called me and she was like, can I stop over? I have something for you. And, I had been wearing one set of blue jean overalls and I don't know, a t-shirt and a sweater that I had bought at the Gap, after the flood. And that was it. I was I don't have time to think about buying a whole new wardrobe right now because I'm in the middle of my master's degree. I don't have time for this, petty vanity stuff. I have to write papers, And she came over with this whole collection of clothing that she had bought at Target. And it was super discounted. And there were some really cute little things that she got me. And they were in a $1 pile or a $5 pile. And none of them were really, quote, my style per se. But it was the thought that somebody else that was struggling also financially was able to think of me and what I was going through and to bless me. And that was God's way of showing me that the form and the manner of which it happens is usually through other people, but it's coming from the Father. It's showing other people's hearts for you, showing the heart of our Father. And so then, once my apartment was finished and, I'm thinking about what I want to put into the apartment, and I received, a reimbursement check from the insurance company. And I was really thinking strategically about how I wanted to spend that money because there were so many things I had lost. And because my renter's insurance policy, I had only put in a certain amount, you're only going to get that amount, even though I had more assets than that because I had not taken the time to update that policy. So heads up, if you have a renter's policy or, some kind of home insurance policy, make sure that you update that yearly or every 6 months or every season as you acquire new things, and make sure you put them into your inventory with photos and prices and all that to make your life easier, because I was not prepared for any of that when it happened to me. And because it was a flood, I didn't even have access to the papers or my laptop because my laptop was ruined in the flood as well. So what I'm getting at is that sometimes it's through other people that we receive these unexpected blessings. So, I'm evaluating, rereading this book that I read previously. I'm going through my journal with my goals that I had hoped to accomplish by 2025. And I'm going, wow, I accomplished this, check, I still have this incomplete. I still need these 3 action steps to complete, and I'm like taking note of what I have completed and what is incomplete. And as I'm doing this, I'm looking at my expenses, and I'm looking at how, again, when you get into this habit of like having a credit card, sometimes it's like swipe, and you don't think anything of it because you're like, oh, that's cool. Let me check that out, right? And then I know that I can return it if I don't like it because Amazon has a return policy or whatever. But it's that in that moment of like reanalyzing everything, and then having the memory of how when I was in school and my dad was dying and I had a flood and I'm living in hotels, that there's so much pressure coming at me on so many angles that the idea of buying and purchasing wasn't really a thing because I was living in a hotel and, I needed to keep my life very simple. And because of my water, my sink and water freezing, in the winter of 24, I had to literally remove everything in my van, which is like my home away from home, and gut it out and start all over again. Like I had to remove all the moldy wood. I had to remove the wood that had, been ruined. So it was a very sad process because my dad and I had built that particular version of my van. And so it was like, not just the fact that I lost that, that I was like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I have to rebuild my van and it's expensive because I got to buy this wood all over again. But it was the fact that my dad and I had built it together, and that, I learned certain skills by doing that with my dad. And so it was a sad thing for me to like see it being all ripped apart when my dad and I built it. Well, I can't remember if it was Psalms or Proverbs, either today or yesterday, but within the past day or so. And it was about, the, like, when a person, it was about King Jehoshaphat and King Azaziah or something, and that the King Azaziah was a wicked king, and because King Jehoshaphat aligned himself with a wicked king, none of his plans with shipbuilding came through because he aligned himself with someone who was wicked. And all of a sudden, like, I had this epiphany of connecting the dots, and I was like, oh my gosh, like the van build that I started building with my fiance, that particular version of the van build was destroyed. Everything had to be removed because there was a sewer spill because he didn't put the toilet seat lid on tight, and everything had to be redone. All the insulation in the floor, all the wood, just everything. And that's what I'm saying. When you're aligning yourself with someone who is not being honest with you, they're not for you, your plans are going to fail. And whether or not they're telling you the evil and the wickedness that they're doing, the evidence will be that the things that you try to produce and finish with that person, they will fail, okay? And then later, I was working with another carpenter who was trying to help me get this van done. And he was the same person that helped rebuild my apartment after the flood. And I esteem this man highly for his skill set because he truly is a master carpenter, electrician, plumber, all of that. And he does really, really great work. However, his problem has been being an alcoholic, being a drug addict, and, and in this period, he was discovered not working this particular day when he was supposed to be working, and he was literally asleep. And when he was caught, you know, the contract ended. Like, you know, like it was like, you need to complete these things. And he's like, oh yeah, I'll get to it. You know, I just had to lay down for a second. And the point is, when you're doing grueling work and it's really hot outside, like, I have a heart for people. It's not like I expect people to, you know, be a slave of any kind. I really am a reasonable person. And so was my landlord. The issue was that he was being deceptive, okay? And he had required additional things to be done in the apartment that really did not need to be replenished or replaced because it was a bathroom. And even though the bathroom had flooded, there was no need to pull out all those tiles. There's no need to remove the bathtub. Like, there's no need to do all that, but he did it telling us it had to be done when that was a lie. And it costs a lot of money to replace that as well. And that's, again, where I'm saying, what does the devil do? He comes to lie, kill, steal, and destroy. And instead of looking at the friendship and the business relationship that he had formed with me over many years, his greed of wanting what he wanted overtook the core principle of serving me, the client, of what I needed in order to move forward into that apartment. And every time he made those decisions, it kept extending my stay in the hotel instead of allowing me to come back home to my apartment. And I was in hotels for 5 months. Like, that's unheard of. You know, that project should have been done a lot sooner. But that's what I mean about people taking advantage. And most of the time, it's going to come back to people that are alcoholics, drug addicts, narcissists, thieves, people that are taking high risks for their own benefit, and they're not taking in the consequences of how their behavior affects other people, specifically widows, orphans, and poor, and specifically just taking advantage of women, knowing that we don't understand some of these things in terms of costs and in terms of, you know, that something should take this long, because that's not our normal. Like, my normal thing is I know how to shop, but that doesn't mean that I understand about carpentry expenses. Like, that I may know a basic idea, but again, when somebody knows how to take advantage of you, they can take advantage of you. So the bottom line is, I was thinking about that. And then my van went through like a standstill. It was like I could not proceed forward in that project. And I could not figure out why. Like, what is the holdup? Like, why is there still a delay? Like, I have the time to move forward with it, but for whatever reason, it was not moving forward. And hello.
How you doing?
Good. And so that's why sometimes it's like, sometimes when your project doesn't go through, now that I think about it, it's like certain things were built with another person who was taking advantage of me. And so then that project comes to a halt. And that's like God's signature of like saying, like, this is not the way that I do things. Like, things should be in agreement, and there should be, you're agreeing to do this and the other person is agreeing to do that, and there needs to be harmony between the two people, and, you know, or more that are involved. And then there would be an outcome which is favorable, because the Lord wants to bless us. And I started to think about that on the whole idea of blessings, and that, again, that particular project, you know, it came to a halt. And in that pause, or in that period of no building, like, there was just, I wasn't doing anything to the van in terms of physically making it any better. I was just reevaluating what projects I had left to do. And again, things that, you know, I had commissioned, saying, hey, I want you to do this particular thing. And I gave him the supplies to do it. And I wanted like a door on this cast iron wood burning stove to have a copper door or the glass replaced. And he brought it back to me with aluminum in it. And I looked at him like, I gave you copper to do this project with. And his response was, oh, that didn't really work out that well. And I said, well, then I want my copper materials back. And so he gives me a copper colored baking pan, but he doesn't give me the copper back. And this is what I mean about people that have ill intention. They're looking at what they can get with that resource that you have, and they steal it from you instead of fulfilling what they were supposed to do on the project. So I'm out a copper sheet on this project. So what I'm getting at is, all this time has passed. I'm waiting on this grant, and I'm being told that I'm going to school. And so I'm preparing myself mentally again for going to school. And so I'm gathering my supplies. I'm preparing my space to be a student. You know, I'm looking online at what the books are going to cost me and all this stuff. And I put in all the things I'm supposed to do. And they pay for the tuition, and I'm able to register, but none of the living expenses are supplied. And without those living expenses, I can't drive back and forth to school. You know, I didn't have the money supplied to buy all the necessary books. And this is what I mean about when people are trying to piecemeal you, okay? They're giving you only what they think you need, and they're not looking at the fact that they made an agreement for an entire plan for you that included tuition and living expenses and reimbursement from last year's expenses from them delaying and not giving you what you needed last year. And the point is, I have all this in writing, and yet they failed to come through. And this is where, again, I know that God, my Father, is a good Father. And I know that when he says that he's going to get me what I need, he is. But I have to be flexible with the timing of when that is actually going to happen. And sometimes the waiting process, the delay process of, like, you think that you're going to school and then you're not going to school, and then, you know, and then your plans get rearranged again. So in short, I have a federal student loan from last year that was supposed to be reimbursed last year that I'm still waiting for to get that in my hands. And, you know, and then you get to a place where you're like, is this even, am I even going to get what I need? And this is where doubt can destroy your mind, because you're like going, did I miss something? Did I not complete a certain form? And I'm like, no, I did everything I was supposed to do. This is about bureaucracy. This is about waiting on the Lord. And sometimes waiting on the Lord is a frustrating process, because we want what we want in the timing that we want it. And I finally, like, after days of crying and, you know, accepting the fact that I wasn't going to school October 27th, after being, you know, motivated that that was going to happen, once again, I'm, you know, looking at my expenses, reevaluating how I want to spend my money. And in all this, you know, looking at my spending plan, looking at my income generation, thinking about how I really want to spend my time going forward. It's in that moment that I was like, you know what? I could apply for a loan or credit card being that I've established better credit in the past couple years. And maybe they'll give me a loan to be able to pay off the other credit card with like the 0% interest for 18 months. And that will be able to sustain me even longer. And maybe in that time frame, like this organization will come through with the funding of the grant. So again, you know, all of these different ways of handling things are ideas that, you know, the Lord is planting. And I'm like, okay. So I apply for this and all my credits reports were frozen. Credit agencies were frozen. So I had to unfreeze it. And then they're like, you're approved. And you have to understand, like, that one victory of being approved, okay, after all the hardship that I have been through from 2018 until now, from association with my fiance and all of the financial hardship that he put me through, for this year in 2025 to have that hope and then to receive the benefit, the blessing that I was approved for that, you know, credit card that I'm going to be able to have 0% for 18 months. And it just buys me some more time to think about what I need to do and how I'm going to handle the situation. And again, it comes back to gratitude. And when I was in a state of gratitude for receiving this blessing, my mom came to me and said, I, you know, felt very inspired by the Lord, and I am supposed to bless you. And the amount that she is blessing me with is the exact amount that I needed to pay off all of my expenses, all of my debt on the credit card and the student loan. And that's what I mean about God. God is a good father, and he's going to bless you in ways that you can't even comprehend. And that is going to wipe out this tremendous amount of stress that I've been holding since 2018. And it's going to give me the freedom to make better ongoing financial choices, because now I'm going to have my time back, that instead of me having to deal with all these negative things that I've been trying to fight, I will literally be able to have an excellent credit score, no debt to my name, the ability to focus on my business. And that is how God is as a good father. He loves to bless his children, and he loves to keep proving and showing that despite all the hardships, despite all the storms, despite all the floods, despite the death and the loss, despite all of the romantic, mishaps of trusting the wrong kind of man, despite all of that, despite all of the antics that I have gone through, from being a daughter of an alcoholic, from being a fiance to a drug addict, narcissist, that despite all that, despite on the physical loss, the emotional loss, the spiritual loss of it all, it's like, it comes back to this. God was with me in it all. He was there with me. And to know that for sure, that no matter what, God is with me, he is for me, he is blessing me, and it's only going to get better. I just want to shout out that the God of Israel is the real deal God. He gave his precious son Jesus to die on that cross. He died, he was buried in a tomb for 3 days, he rose from the dead, and Jesus, Yeshua, is very alive and very well. And when you pray to him and you read his word and you claim it and you declare it and you present yourself as a living sacrifice to God, he will change everything in your life and bless you in ways that you can't even imagine. And I am definitely a testimony of that. And multiple times that I have been rescued, pulled out of the pit, and shown, like blessings that you can't even imagine. So I pray to you tonight that wherever you are in your journey, that you get right with God first, seek first the kingdom of his righteousness, and all these things will be added to you, Matthew 6:33, that you create a Bible study practice by reading your Bible, and you get to know who God is, you get to understand who his son Jesus is, you get to understand who the Holy Spirit is, and you invite the Holy Spirit into your heart, and you start to walk in a way that may seem completely controversial to the way that the world walks. And in this new walk that you have with the Holy Spirit, you will be taken care of. There will be times when you're going to doubt. There's going to be times when you want to cry and you're like, this isn't working, because physically your circumstances don't appear to be working. But behind the scenes, God has you in the palm of his hand, and he is working things out for your good. So I pray that you will have that type of belief and that type of faith and walk in it. Have a good night, everybody.